What's going on, Wiz Nation? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of State of the Wizards. I'm your host, Dcan, along with my co-host, Kjose. Kjose, what's been going on?
Nothing much, man. Everything is everything, man. How you feeling, bro?
I feel good, man. Feel good. I'm ready to talk some Wizards hoops with you tonight.
All right.
A lot of things. There's a lot of things that a lot of stuff to talk about, especially when we talk about the draft coming up. There's a lot of rumblings out there on who a lot of people believe that the Wizards are leaning towards drafting. So we'll talk about that. I'm gonna get your draft prediction, and I'll also give my draft prediction. First, before we jump right in, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of State of the Wizards. This is episode 23. So this is the MJ episode, the greatest of all time episode. So anyway, let's go ahead and just give our quick shout out. If you haven't already followed us, please subscribe to State of Wizards on YouTube. Also follow me at Wizards Mafia on Twitter. And also follow my man DC Hoopla at DC Hoopla on Twitter. And also subscribe to us on Spotify as well, and our podcast. Go check us out. Season 2 of Wiz Takes podcast is coming out in about a week or so. Try to get it done. The new season, we're gonna try to get that done. I'm gonna try to get that done. With the draft. So that's the goal. All right, Kjose. So what you got on tap for us tonight, man?
So definitely want to talk about the draft. That's in about a couple of weeks. And we see a whole lot of people coming up with who we should draft. We've talked about what makes sense as far as the draft. But let's talk about I'm going to tell you what I think may happen on draft night. A part of me feels that we're going to probably trade back. And if you just look at the players that we brought in, you have a few guys sprinkled in there, the Dyson Daniels, the Tari Easons, you had Johnny Davis that came through, but you've seen a bunch of other guys that look like second round picks, and even some of those guys look like they may not even be drafted. So when I see that, to me, that makes me think that the organization is not sold on a lot of guys that either the local media is putting out there, or even some of the local Wizard bloggers are putting out there. So I think based off of how the way we draft in the past, we're going to probably look at other organizations, and then we may draft a player who didn't come and work out with us. We've done it before. We did it with Rui, and we did it with Denny. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we do that again this upcoming draft.
Yeah, so with Rui, the Spurs was looking at Rui, I do believe. And with Denny, he actually worked out with the Warriors. And last year, Corey Kispert worked out with the Pacers. So you have 3 of Tommy's draft picks who all worked out with other teams. And from my understanding, they did not work out with the Wizards.
Right.
And is that accurate? I mean, I'm not quite sure if Rui got to work. I know Denny didn't work out with us. I know Corey Kispert didn't work out with us. Did Rui actually work out with us?
I don't think Rui worked out with us either. If you remember, Tommy Shepard scouted him for 3 years. So you think about 2 years that he scouted him, Ernie Grunfeld was still the general manager. Right. So right. I don't believe we worked him out either, because we didn't think that he would drop the 9.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's a good possibility that, we pick up a guy that's, being scouted and working out with another team. There's a good possibility that could happen.
Right.
So my prediction is, you said you believe we would draft back.
Yeah, I think we're going to trade back.
You think we'll trade back? I'm going to predict that we draft Benedict Mathurin. I think that there's, first of all, this is in hopes that he's still there. And I believe that Johnny Davis may be gone before he comes to us. Even though we work Johnny Davis out, I don't know if the Wizards brass is impressed with Johnny Davis or not. I can't.
Right.
I'm not there. I can't tell you, how they feel about Johnny Davis and his workout. It seems like it went well. I know Dyson Daniels is working out tomorrow. All the Dyson Daniels fans out there, they're hoping that he'll impress the Wizards management tomorrow in his workout. But I don't think that they're inviting these guys with this idea that they're going to be the next draft pick. I think they're actually doing a favor for other teams as well. Every player that works out is actually being scouted, not just by the team they're working out for, but they're also sending those performances over to the other organizations as well. In my opinion, I believe that is the case. Other teams want to know as well, how did that player do when they worked out with you? So I don't think that it's a lock that Johnny Davis or Dyson Daniels would be picked by the Wizards. I believe that, we like what we saw, at least, what I saw from Benedict Mathurin, what I saw from Agbaji. If Benedict Mathurin goes, then I would personally love for us to draft Agbaji, but there's a good possibility that Tommy Shepard may draft Jovic, or he may draft, somewhere in the bottom half of the draft where people weren't even expecting that player to go into the lottery. You see? So that's how I feel. I feel like if number one's not there, then Tommy may just bail on that altogether and just say, okay, well, I'm going to go with the safe pick. And I would love for that safe pick to be Agbaji. I would love that. But I don't know if that's who he really wants. I don't know if that's, what did you say? The look? I don't know if he has the look, for this team and for this organization.
Well, Johnny Davis does have the look, but I think the look that Tommy Shepard would be looking for would be a guy. I know we had worked out Jaden Hardy, who's also coming out of the G League. You never know, he could possibly be a player that we may draft, but that's a guy you would trade back for. So if fans really pay attention to the players that are being brought in, you can kind of get an idea of the direction that the organization most likely will go. And we've seen it before because they've done it before in the past. I mean, they got the 3 picks that we have. We did not work those guys out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a fact.
I don't even know, did we work out Troy Brown Jr.?
I'm not quite
sure. Did we work out Troy Brown Jr.?
I'm not sure. There was a question on Twitter earlier, who was a player that the Wizards drafted. I think Quentin put that out there. And I think a lot of people's responses were Troy Brown Jr. But I'll be honest with you, I don't remember Troy Brown Jr. working out with us. I don't remember that at all.
Well, I do recall, I don't think Kelly Oubre had worked out with us either. So the organization has a history of not working out their draft picks. They normally just go based off of what other teams say about the draft pick, and that just tells you a lot about the organization, where their focus is in the scouting department. So for a lot of people out there that want to give Tommy the benefit of the doubt, I mean, there you go. The last 3 drafts, he didn't work those guys out. He basically went off of information from San Antonio, Golden State, and the Indiana Pacers. There you have it.
Yeah. I just see that this, the Wizards are going to be in a situation where, you have the draft pick, and then you have to think about, and this is going into the next thing, You have to think about who you may sign or who you may trade for along with that draft pick, along with picking up that draft pick. There's been people out there talking, obviously, that actually, let's go to Tommy Shepard's own statement. Tommy Shepard said that he doesn't see himself drafting a rookie point guard that would come in and be an immediate impact player, right? So I think a lot of people are taking those words and they're what they're saying at this point is okay, if it's not going to be a rookie point guard, then it's going to have to be one of these veteran point guards who's available. We saw reports out there that obviously John Wall would be open to playing with Bradley Beal again. Now we're seeing, reports that Mike Conley Jr. would be one of those players that would come. Who was the other? D'Angelo Russell, I think, was most recently thrown. His name was thrown out there.
Brogdon's name was thrown out there.
Malcolm Brogdon. So, let's go into this. All right, you got our draft predictions. Let's say if based off of what you and me are saying with our draft predictions, we do exactly what we believe the Wizards are going to do. Now, what does the Wizards do at this point? Who should the Wizards sign or trade for to help, bolster that point guard spot for the next season?
Well, if you look at the list, the players that look realistic are Patty Mills, but I doubt he's going to leave this situation. Tyus Jones, because I think by looking at it, he's only made he made about $8 million. But see, that's the thing. You look at DeLone Wright, because I've seen his name thrown around. You look at Tyus Jones. You look at even a guy like Colin Sexton. Look what's attached to these guys: bird rights. So these teams own their bird rights. How much money do you think these guys are going to command? I mean, is Tyus Jones, are you going to be able to re-sign him for $8 million or even $9 or $10 million? You're probably going to have to pay him a little bit more, about $15 million. Do you want to fork that kind of money into a guy? And isn't Tyus Jones undersized too? So that will go against, for people who want Bradley Beal to stick around, that will go against what Bradley Beal asked for. He said he wanted a tall point guard and a pass first type point guard. I don't see too much of I haven't seen too much of Tyus Jones' game like that to really say if he's that. But in this day in the NBA, a pass first point guard is very rare to find now because everybody's scoring. So do you look at a guy like?
So do you think that having a pass first point guard, even though the Wizards are looking for that, do you believe that even though we're looking for that should necessarily be the priority, the top priority on the list? Do you think we should just try to go out there and get a point guard that can score?
Well, I mean, a pass first point guard would make sense. So the only one, let's just say that John Wall is not that point guard. Let's say he decides, to compete for a championship. The only point guard on here that I really think makes sense would be a Rajon Rondo, because he's not going to look to score. Plus, he's going to be cheap. But here, with me mentioning Rajon Rondo, 9 times out of 10, people are going to say, well, Rajon Rondo got a little bit of mileage on him. But he fits the need. He's a pass first guard. He's a facilitator. Isn't that what you want? You want him to facilitate, because the issue that we had with Spencer Dinwiddie was Spencer Dinwiddie wasn't a pass first point guard, but he was a guard that could actually score. That became a problem. So if the idea is to let Bill get his, which of course, I don't really believe that should be the idea, then Rajon Rondo is the one that fits that bill to me. And he probably won't cost as much.
Okay. So now what you're saying basically in so many words is you want someone who's just going to come here and, fill a need, just a stopgap. Rajon Rondo is, he's up in age, someone has veteran experience, but he's just going to be a stopgap. Until when? Until we draft a point guard, or until, the point guard, whoever, if we do draft, for example, Dyson Daniels, are you saying that Rondo should be the starter before Daniels gets playing time, or someone that can learn behind him? What's
Absolutely.
you breaking up?
I mean, the thing is with Dyson Daniels, him and Rondo got something in common. I'm sorry about that. Am I still breaking up?
Yeah,
said the thing about Dyson Daniels.
I can hear you though. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the thing about Daniels, him and Rondo got something in common. Neither one of those guys can really shoot. Rondo is probably a worse shooter than Daniels, but
Well, he's improved
to be honest,
the last couple of years, but
yeah, he's improved the last couple of years. He's more trustworthy. At the end of the day, the organization is trying to look for a stopgap at the point guard position. They don't believe that there's anybody worth drafting the point, in this draft as far as point guard. I'm not going to disagree with them on that. However, when you look at the point guard, lineup or should I say the market for point guard, it's not really that appealing unless you're going to get John Wall. Westbrook 9 times out of 10 is not coming back. Kyrie Irving, you might as well scratch him off. So when you look at this class, man, you just have nothing but stopgaps, guys that just don't really move the needle.
Yeah, so I saw Colin Sexton was another name that's being thrown out there. And, he's one of the younger guards on this list. He's about 23, but he'll be 24 years of age. And he's only been in the league 4 years, a restricted free agent. The Cavaliers own his bird rights. But he's not commanding a lot of money. He's not breaking the bank. I think when you're talking about this younger team, the reason why his name's being thrown out there is obviously because of his age. How I feel personally, I don't think Colin Sexton is somebody who can necessarily move the needle. Obviously, he, like you said, he would be a stopgap. And I mean, there's a lot of people who feel differently about these types of players. Colin Sexton is a player who actually does very well in his role, but that's in Cleveland. Look at who he's surrounded by now in Cleveland. He's not going to have the same supporting cast here in Washington. So is he the same player? Is he a different player? We can't assume, and I've said this before in a previous episode of State of Wizards, we can't assume that just because players are great elsewhere, that's going to automatically replicate here in Washington. We can't assume that. Because
we already went down the rabbit hole already with Spencer Dinwiddie.
Exactly. We've already went down that path.
If you think about it, people are saying the same thing when it comes with Brogdon, and people are saying the same thing about even with what's his name, Mike Conley Jr. They're thinking that these guys can come here and do what they're doing in their previous locations. But let me say this about Sexton: he's young. Okay, he's about to be 24, as you stated. But the question was, well, could he fit alongside Bradley Beal? The answer would be no. Neither one of these guys are a good fit. So, as I said in the previous State of the Wizards episode, the conversation shouldn't be what player can fit alongside of Bradley Beal. It should be more so, does Bradley Beal fit alongside whichever player? Because when you bring a young player alongside of Bradley Beal, you shouldn't be asking, can that young player fit alongside Bradley Beal, when you know the answer to that, which is no. It's more so, does Bradley Beal fit into what we're doing? And the answer is no.
Yeah, I agree. Look, Bradley Beal's a great player, but at this point we're becoming younger. It's just that simple. We're becoming a younger team. I don't know how else to stress that. Bradley Beal's he's literally the oldest player on the team now. He's not young anymore. He's the vet. He's the seasoned vet. The timeline of events is not matching with where he's at in his career. He wants a win now product. We have guys that are young, who are still growing, who are still maturing, who are still trying to learn the game. So even with a Colin Sexton, you put him next to Bradley Beal, there's going to be growing pains. because you're talking about a guy who's already well into he's going into his 11th year with the Wizards with one organization. You have to worry about a adjustment period with Colin Sexton, a period of time of getting acclimated with his new team, his new teammates, new organization. I mean, that's like a year-long process, and Bradley Beal planned on signing for 5 years, right, on his new deal. How much longer do you think it's going to take for Colin Sexton and Bradley Beal to create this magic in the backcourt? I think it's at least a 2 or 3 year process. And I don't know if Colin Sexton is that type of player that we hold on to for that long. What you think?
Right. No, I mean, he's not. And, you think about it, when you talk about a 2 to 3 year process for them two to finally get it together, think about it. 2, 3 years, Colin Sexton will be, 26, 27? 3 years, you're talking about Bradley Beal at the age of 32. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a young, point guard trying to get acclimated with a seasoned veteran point guard. It's just not going to work, man. I think we're really prolonging it that way.
So let me play devil's advocate here. All right. Let's say you sign. Let's say if you were to offer Colin Sexton something he couldn't refuse. Obviously Cleveland would have an opportunity to match it, but they don't. He becomes a Wizard and he's here, right? And we give him, 3 years, 4 year player option. All right. Let's say 4 years from now, just to play devil's advocate. Let's say if we're 4 years from now, you got Kuz re-signed, you got KP re-signed, you got Bill on a new contract, you got Sexton, you got young players maturing, Rui, Denny, right? They're now maturing. By 2026, let's just say we become contention. At that point, do you believe that this is the core? Do you believe that would be a core group that you could actually turn into a contender, a championship? Sexton, Bill, KP, Kuz. Is he enough? I guess is my question. Do you believe that he's enough? We sign to that, and then you see some success in 3 or 4 years. Do you re-sign him for a longer term deal after that?
I mean, I would say yes, because he will still be young, but let's just based off of the roster that you put together, let's be realistic. The Wizards are not going to do that because they will be well into the luxury tax. How much money does Kuzma receive? How much money does KP have? How much money you paying KCP? You paying Bradley Beal 35% of the cap. Ted is not going to pay way into the luxury tax with a team that probably be no higher than a 6th seed in the East. Right. You got to factor in. Look what's getting ready to happen. Donovan Mitchell is not happy due to Quinn Snyder stepping down. So he could possibly be a player coming over to the East. Zion Williamson, the Pelicans are already saying that they don't want to fully, max out his contract, make it fully guaranteed. So when you build that team, and I have to be frank, and I know people are not going to want to hear this, nobody's going to be afraid of that roster that you just mentioned. Nobody. Mm-hmm. There's no guarantee that, Rui or Denny, one of those two guys could possibly be packaged for another stopgap veteran. We don't, anything can happen, but the organization, Ted is just not going to pay into the luxury tax for a team just for mediocre success. Because that's pretty much what he's only concerned about, but he's not going to pay into the luxury tax for
that. Yeah. I don't see that happening either. The cap is supposed to go up. We talked about that in the previous episode of State of the Wizards. I think the luxury is supposed to go up to around 149, 150-ish. Right. And, by then, the Wizards are either going to be tapping on the ceiling of that, or they're going to be close, very close to it because of, the following contracts that I'm about to go over once again. We always do one of these every episode, we kind of look at the roster and how much each player is getting paid. You know, Bradley Beal obviously is going to be commanding upwards of $48 million starting next season and the year, you know, the years beyond that. And then you look at Porzingis, you know, I keep harping on the fact that, you know, KP is going to be commanding upwards of $40 million, you know, a season. KCP is, you know, what are you doing with him? Kyle Kuzma, you already know he's going to want that contract extension. He's eligible for one right now.
Yeah.
All right. And then you got Rui to think about. You got Denny to think about. There's just so many other players that you have to pay to play. And that's why you have to be cautious about whoever you're signing this offseason, because are they worth the long-term investment, or are these free agent point guards that we see listed here, are all of these guys just stopgaps? And I think you answered that question, you know, just fine. You said that you believe that these guys are just stopgaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the Wizards, you know, the Wizards will really have, they're going to have to trade for Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton. What does a Colin Sexton package look like? Who's included in that said package that you're sending to Cleveland? You know, do you throw in a guy like, Denny? Most fans would say, oh, it's got to be Denny or it's got to be Rui that you throw in there. You know, just to get a guy like that. How much money, you know, will he be asking for to stay in Washington? So let's say if Colin Sexton probably wants $20 million. Okay, you give him that. He's getting $20 million a season. Well, what does that mean for a guy like Porzingis? That means that Porzingis may not get his money. You're probably going to have to flip him because you may not want to lose him for anything. A guy like Kyle Kuzma, he's going to be on the outside looking in because he's not going to get paid. So it's just very, very unrealistic to really pay everybody, especially if the idea is to pay the franchise player 35% of the salary cap. Everybody can't eat on the Washington Wizards. Let's just keep, somebody's going to be starving.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I mean, it is what it is. Money talks, but money also can scream at you. It can yell at you.
Yes.
And if Ted Leonsis has got his ears open, you know, the cap is telling him, you can't keep spending, Ted. You can't keep spending. You're not going to keep spending. You're not going to be able to keep spending. So, look, at the end of the day, what should the Wizards do as far as signing a point guard? I think we both kind of agreed that the safe route for them would be to just bring Wall back. It makes sense to just bring Wall back, you know, sign him for the mid-level if you can, after a buyout. You don't have to give him, you know, 3 or 4 years. You can give him, you know, 1 year with a team option or 2 years with the team option. You know, you don't have to break the bank with him. It's just, you know, you already know what you're going to get out of a player like him. And again, it just, right now, we have no other choice but to go this route because of the decision that they made years ago to move Wall. And it's a decision that's still biting them in the ass since they made that decision.
I agree. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You know, I know everybody on Twitter, especially Wizards Twitter, went off when Colin Cowherd pretty much just said that John Wall did not make his teammates better. We know that to be a falsehood. That's so untrue. Yeah. All you gotta do is look at what the team has been doing since he's been traded.
Yeah.
Period. Just look at what the record has been when he's not on the court for the Washington Wizards. It's not pretty to look at. We're 29th in attendance, and nobody really goes to the games to even watch the team play. They more so go to the game to watch the opposing team. We've heard MVP chants for the opposing team player at the free throw line. So at least with John Wall, that dog that Bradley Beal is talking about, that dog right now is still practicing, and he's being told by his team that, hey, we're going to try to move you, which we know is going to lead into a buyout.
So let's just a heads up, man. I got that notice again. It's annoying. So you said what now?
No, so I see it.
Oh, okay. So the looks like Rui, I know you wanted to touch on this, so I'm gonna give you your floor. I'm gonna give you the floor on this. We were kind of talking offline earlier about Rui and his endorsements. Let's kind of go into let's expound on that. When we brought up Rui earlier, we were kind of touching on the fact that Rui is a marketable player, right? And so, Rui and his endorsements right now are a legitimate reason to say that he is a marketable player. But the
Yes.
Wizards don't treat him as such, you believe, right? So go ahead and expound on why you say that.
So the Wizards don't treat him as a marketable player because we still got Bradley Beal on the team. So this is what I noticed, what I had looked up. When Rui was drafted, he was the second most marketable player signed with the Jordan brand. The first marketable player signed with Jordan brand was Zion Williamson, who was drafted in that same draft. So we know that Rui makes about $2 million a year with brand Jordan. Rui also has an endorsement with that company called GOAT. So that's how he's able to get his signature shoes, get his J's sent to him through that company. He also has an endorsement with Nesson. He has an endorsement with Casio, and he has like a couple of endorsements in Japan. So all alone, when I look everything he has, I looked it up. He's making $10 million a season off of endorsements. That's more than what his NBA money is on his rookie contract. I think he gets about $4 million. So you're talking about a player who's making $14 million a season, 10 of it in endorsements, 4 from NBA, but he's the 7th man on this roster. What is the problem with that picture right there? How is it that a player that's super marketable like that, that's the ambassador for Japan, is the 7th man on a roster for his franchise, and he makes $14 million a season? That's crazy to me. We're not treating him as a superstar. This is an international superstar. This guy already had his Jordan deal before he even dribbled a basketball. But we're treating him like he's, down there with Smith and Howell Neto. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And he's a lottery pick. We picked him 9th. Did we pick him 9th just to have him be treated like Howell Neto and Ish Smith?
Right. When we talked about it earlier, I said, I don't remember a Jordan Brand athlete who was the 7th man off the bench. And I said, I don't remember that. I couldn't think of any name, couldn't think of anybody, and I still can't think of anybody. If you guys know who was a Jordan Brand athlete who had their own signature line, who was a 7th man, please drop it in the comments and let us know, because I don't think I've ever seen this. Usually in the event that Team Jordan brings on an athlete, that athlete is supposed to be one of the core pieces of that franchise.
Right.
We talked about Vin Baker. That was Vin Baker when he was with the Milwaukee Bucks, and Vin Baker was putting up doubles nightly, and the Bucks were good. You talk about Ray Allen. Ray Allen was a franchise cornerstone. He was a guy that was, the franchise player for Milwaukee, Seattle, and then he eventually, became a role player for the Celtics and then for the Heat. But all of these guys, Eddie Jones, he was Jordan Brand, Mike Bibby, Jordan Brand. All these guys had pivotal roles for their franchises. And Rui doesn't have a pivotal role. It's like we're just trying him out, to see if he fits a system, any system that will stick for Rui's game. Then Rui improves and he does his thing in half a season. And it's like what else does this man need to do to get more playing time? I just don't know. I've never seen an organization treat a marketable athlete in this fashion, like the Wizards treat Rui. I've never seen it.
Right. You never will either, unless they play for the Washington Wizards. So that's the frustrating part.
Yeah. So we're running out of time. Did you want to split this up? We can make it a two-parter. Did you want to split this up, or did you want to end it here?
Let's split it up. Let's
All right. So we'll
split it
end.
up. Definitely want to touch on Bill.
All right. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with you guys here. And in just a moment, just stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of State of the Wizards. Welcome back to part 2 of State of the Wizards. And we're going to pick up where we left off in the first half of this segment. So we were talking about Rui endorsements. So let's go ahead and just further expound on the conversation. I know where we left off was, you felt like Rui, in a sense, isn't getting his just due. He's pretty much a marketable athlete, but he's sitting on pretty much the bench and trying to prove himself as a marketable athlete to the Wizards. What do you think what do you think the future holds for somebody like Rui going forward?
A part of me thinks that he's going to have to go into a situation where it'll get maximized. I mean, he's a very marketable player. He was marketable the moment he was drafted. Again, he has a country that's depending on him. And he's playing for an organization that doesn't treat him how the way the Houston Rockets did when they got Yao Ming, how the way the Milwaukee Bucks do with Giannis. So when you have, what we do know is when you have foreign players that transitions to the NBA, the expectation is that foreign player is going to be marketable. I mean, look at what's going on down there in Dallas with Luka Doncic. So, who is also on Jordan Brand as well. So you have a guy like Rui Hachimura who's on Jordan Brand, who has his own shoe. We know that the shoes that they usually advertise are most of the time they're the 8s. But the fact of the matter is, you got a country that's expecting to see him on a bigger scale, and the Washington Wizards are literally stunning his growth. They're stunning his growth on the basketball court, and they're stunning his growth marketing-wise. So it's just mind-boggling to me. But you got these games coming up in Japan for the exhibition game. They're going to market him as much as they want. But then when the regular season starts, they're going to throw him right back to that 7th man role where he's sitting there with bench players, and they're not going to actually advertise him as the superstar that he should be. So people who sit there and say, well, I just don't see the superstar power. Of course you don't see the superstar power because the organization doesn't allow you to see the superstar power. They hold him back. I mean, come on, this guy's making $10 million in endorsements. When do you know a 7th man has $10 million in endorsements annually? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm curious to how much Bill makes with Jordan Brand because, we know that Bill is going to get, a larger chunk of the money being with Jordan Brand. Jordan falls under Nike. Bill was once a Nike brand Nike team athlete. And the Jordan signature for him, he gets his own sig line, I believe, his own logo and things of that nature. He's making more money as well. But I don't know if he's making as much as Rui under the Jordan Brand umbrella. It would be very interesting to see the comparisons in the amount of money that Rui gets versus our franchise player from endorsements.
Right. I don't know how much he's making either. What does work to Bill's advantage is his AAU team is sponsored by Brand Jordan. So I don't know. I mean, if you look at it, most if you look at guys like LeBron James and even Michael Jordan, even Kobe, those guys made more money off of their endorsements.
Yeah.
So if you think about a guy like Bradley Beal or any other player that makes majority of their money off of contracts, NBA contracts, you would consider that hustling backwards. So what we do know, which is now transitioning to Bradley Beal, is Bradley Beal is trying to build his brand up. Okay. But it's very challenging for him to build his brand up in Washington because if you're not winning ball games and you have an endorsement, what is the endorsement really doing for you if you're not winning? Because he may have incentives in his contract with Brand Jordan. If he, hits these personal accolades, he gets extra money. Same thing with Zion Williamson, which is probably the reason why you keep hearing rumblings that he doesn't want to be there with the Pelicans. Because you go to a bigger market where you can be marketed, you can make more endorsement dollars.
Yeah.
Now, Rui, on the other hand, being so he's an international player, he's going to make more money here in DC as the international player. But imagine a domestic player in a small market like Washington trying to make money.
Yeah. I mean, we did touch on that earlier in the offline conversation as well, how Bill making more money in endorsements, and I said this to you before that, there may be incentives in his contract with Jordan Brand that if you actually make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or the finals, you may get a bonus. If you're actually on a competitive team and you're in a competitive environment, there's those additional incentives that Nike and Jordan Brand gives athletes for excelling. And so if we're not doing that here, and Bradley Beal is a Jordan Brand athlete, he's not going to qualify for those bonuses and for those incentives because year in and year out, he keeps losing with the same team and he's not able to maximize that ability to take advantage of those incentives. So somewhere like Miami, for example, Miami is a tax-free state. All right. Mm-hmm. Let's just say if he was to opt in and demand that trade, he gets that, that $37 million next season, and he gets the $5.5 million trade kicker, and then he signs the $199, right? 6 months after, that's $244, or $241, $242 plus additional incentives. Maybe it's not $199. Maybe it goes up a little bit more. You're still right there at $244 million. That goes a long way with the added with the addition of the Jordan Brand incentives. You're with Miami, you're in a larger market, you're on a competitive team who's going to contend, and you're in a tax-free state. So you're getting all your money. The $250 here in Washington doesn't look as appealing as the $244 in Miami, for example. The $250 in Washington is all made, that money can be made up elsewhere. And, look, I am making an argument for Bill because at this point, it's like, let's just save this fairy tale of you winning a championship here. Let's save it because the next 5 years, we all know we're going to be on the treadmill to nowhere with you leading this team. And it's not saying anything about you per se as a basketball player. What it's saying is that the organization is constantly failing to put a winning product around a player who isn't worth that amount of money. That's really what it says. And again, it's not saying anything about the player. I don't know how many times people have to hear that from you and I when they think that we're just out here bashing Bradley Beal for the sake of bashing Bradley Beal. Look, everyone has the right to be critical of a player if they feel that that player isn't living up to the expectations that they give to every other superstar in the league. Steph Curry makes $44, $45 million. But look at where Steph Curry is. Look at how many rings Steph Curry has.
Right.
And then we're about to give Bradley Beal more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, everyone has a right to be critical, and that's all I'm saying, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the things you said is, when you talk about Miami, when you talk about the state of Florida, there is no state taxes. So think about the contract that Wizards had offered Trevor Ariza some years ago. I think it was like a 4-year deal, 32 million, and he took the exact same deal to play for the Houston Rockets. Well, why is that? Because Texas has no state taxes. So he
Right.
technically was going to be making more money in Texas than he was. So I don't know what property taxes are like in the state of Florida, but you have to factor in that Bradley Beal did sell his home in Virginia, which we know we're both Virginia residents, where you pay property taxes on your vehicles. And we know that Bill had more than one.
You pay your property
So
taxes
he's
on
now
everything.
current. Right, you pay it on just about everything. So 9 times out of 10, now I believe he's in Bethesda. I don't know what the property taxes are like in the state of Maryland. But my point is that he's spending more money up this way. And we're pretty much dealing when you got gas prices, at four something, close to $5, a gallon. It's inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So to what you said, 250 here is not the same as 250 in the state of Texas. I mean, the state of Florida. It can go a long way. And then, of course, you got to factor in his endorsement money. If he's actually hitting these accolades that he has with Brand Jordan, that can potentially make him more money.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to hit him as a Wizard.
Right.
All that money is going to go to the IRS.
Right. And that's a fact. I mean, that's just a fact. Whether people want to hear that or not, it is a fact. Okay. It is what it is. No need to sugarcoat it. You know, Bradley Beal, yes, can be offered the most money here, but that doesn't mean that he can't make the most money elsewhere with his endorsements, with the incentives in each contract, so on and so forth. That is just the fact of the matter. Like I can't stress that enough. And I'm sorry if it pisses Bradley Beal fans off, but it is what it is. Look, Kjose and I have been very, very adamant about the progression in Bill's career. We've been very adamant about it since Bill's been a rookie. And we've all come to the conclusion that we're not going to win with Bill on this team. It's just the fact of the matter. It's just a conclusion. You guys may not be at that conclusion. I don't know what it's going to take for you to come to that conclusion. If a player is with one organization for 11 years and they still have yet to win anything with one organization in 11 years, and they're being paid the highest amount out of any other player on the team, in my opinion, that's unheard of. Because Michael Jordan was winning championships. He had 6 in 13 years. Okay. I mean, let's just, to kind of just digest that. Okay. One player had 6 championships in 13 years. Steph Curry's in his 6 finals in 13 years. Okay. Klay Thompson's in 6 finals in 13 years. And every player that I'm naming is homegrown, has been drafted and played with that organization, one organization. And I can keep going on and on about the success of said superstars who you can justify giving that type of money to because they've been successful. And like I said, it's not his fault. But at the end of the day, we have to be honest with ourselves. Is he Steph? No. Is he Mike? No, he's not any of these players. So why are we constantly running ourselves in this circle, on this when we know that he's not going to make us any better? We can't keep doing that. So
Right, I agree. And Portland is kind of in that same situation as well when it comes down to Damian Lillard because they haven't won anything with him either. As great of a talent Damian Lillard is, he's not going to be able to win. So since I brought that up, there was a report out there that Portland is looking at They're looking at Bradley Beal and they're looking at Zach LaVine. So it's going to be one of those two guys they're going to go after. Of course, Wizard Twitter is saying, well, Bradley Beal is not going to want to go to Portland. How do you know that?
They don't
Why
know.
is everybody speaking for Bradley Beal? We've seen people say, oh, well, he's not going to want to go to Sacramento. How do you know that? Do you have contact with the guy? Did he tell you that he's going to want to go there? Did he tell you he didn't want to go to Phoenix? All teams that actually have an opportunity. The only team that most people seem to don't say that about is the Miami Heat. But how do you guys know that Bradley Beal would not be open to going to Portland? You can't speak for the man. We don't know where he wants to go. He knows, which destinations he has in mind and want to go there. But I know why a lot of people are saying, well, he doesn't want to go to Portland and he doesn't want to go, to Sacramento. Oh, because those teams can actually absorb his contract and they're not winning basketball teams. Still, if those teams are really trying to win now, like Portland and even like Sacramento, where they're probably could be just a Bradley Beal away from going to the playoffs, how are we going to sit here and say, well, he doesn't want to go to that team?
Well,
based off of what?
My thing is Bradley Beal thinks he's the difference maker here. Why wouldn't he think he's the difference maker out west? For a Sacramento Kings franchise who's been struggling, and for a Portland Trailblazers franchise who absolutely needs another veteran guard next to Dame Lillard. Why, if he thinks he can make the difference here in Wizards land, why wouldn't he take that same attitude west and think that he would be the difference maker out there for those franchises? Look, at the end of the day, you have to make sense of it. Don't sit here and say, oh, Bradley Beal wants to go to a competitor. He wants to go to a contender. If he really wanted to do it that bad, he would already be gone. He wouldn't be here anymore. Right or wrong? Is he just taking 250?
It's true. We will see him right now with Golden State.
That's what I'm saying. If winning meant anything to him, he still wouldn't be here. I mean, he wouldn't be here. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. If he really believed that he could win elsewhere and that's something he wanted to do and he set out to do, he would have made the decision to leave already. He would have already put the trade request in. But no, he wants to be paid, and he's saying that he thinks he can be that guy here in Washington. If he thinks he can be that guy here in Washington, why wouldn't he think that he can be that guy in Portland or be that guy in Sacramento? The same rules apply. Just because it's the Wizards, that don't mean that's just some asterisk type of situation. It's the same rules applies across the board. The Wizards of the West is Portland. The Wizards of the West is Sacramento. But guess who's the Wizards of the East is? The Wizards.
Right.
So, you're saying, why would he leave this situation to go to the same situation out west? Well, then the question is, why would he stay in this situation then? Like, make it make sense. He doesn't, right. I guess my thing is, the logic behind this is what people, the logic. People are saying, well, he would leave the Wizards to go contend.
Yeah.
That's true, right? He would leave the Wizards to go contend. But look at the West versus look at the East. The Eastern Conference is stacked. So, look at the West. The West is getting there too, but they have a lot better players out West, in my opinion, for someone like Bradley Beal than the East does. Like, if Bradley Beal stays in the Eastern Conference, he's going to play with Jimmy Butler in Miami, or he's going to play with Joel Embiid in Philly and James Harden. Okay, great duos, right? Maybe Boston tries to throw their hat in there. He could play with Jason Tatum. And I think, obviously, we already know Boston's not going to give up on Brown, but let's just throw these hypotheticals out there. So my thing is in the West, if he joins the Sacramento Kings or the Nuggets out West, he's competing almost at the same level, in my opinion, as if he was to stay in the East with Miami or Philadelphia in the East. He's still contending. You
Right.
know, it's not like he's going to a bum squad out there. Let's say if the Nuggets threw their name in the hat for Bradley Beal. You think the Nuggets can't compete with Bradley Beal in the squad? Come on, man. Sacramento with
I think, of course, but people would probably say, well, yeah.
Sacramento
Yeah,
with
well, people probably would sit there and say, oh, well, I'm sorry. I know I'm breaking up on my end. But I know people would sit there and say that, well, Bradley Beal doesn't want to go to Denver. How do you know that? How do you know he's not want to go to Denver? He gets a chance to play alongside a 2-time MVP. What do you mean he wouldn't want to go to Denver? Oh, well, because how do you know that?
like I said,
How do you know that?
What's the difference? Like, what is the difference? If he was to stay East and play for the Sixers and play with Joel Embiid, what's the difference between that and him going west to the Nuggets and playing with Jokic, who finished first in the MVP over Embiid? What's the difference?
There is no difference.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. When people say, and that's why I said sometimes the logic just ain't clicking to some people. My thing is if he really wants to win, he would already demand a trade out of Washington. And he would say, I want to go here. I want to go to Golden State, or I want to go here. I want to go to Philly. I want to go to Miami. He's not saying that, man. He's not saying that at all. So bottom line is
Right.
there'll be a lot of teams out there who are throwing their names in the hat this offseason for Bradley Beal services. And the teams that are throwing their names in the hat, they feel like they have just as much opportunity to grab Bill as everybody else. All right.
I agree.
It's just that simple.
Well,
yeah.
I wanted to touch on one thing pertaining to Bradley Beal, and that's I don't know if you listened to the podcast that Tommy Shepard was on last week with Nate Duncan. And I kind of skimmed through it because I heard a lot of fluff. And I'm going to give a shout out to Jans J, because I know he was the first person I saw talking about this, where he said that in the podcast, Tommy didn't put out there that he was going to give Bradley Beal the full max. We know that that's what the organization has been harping on the past couple of years, that they was going to pay him the full max. But according to him, he's saying that he didn't hear this in the podcast. How do you feel about that, if that is true, that Tommy Shepard is not all in on giving Bill the full super duper max?
If he doesn't, it doesn't necessarily mean that. First of all, let me say this. I'll say this because I said it before, and I'll say it again to you. I said, don't be surprised if Bradley Beal opts in and he actually does play 1 year on his current deal, and then go back to the table again next offseason to talk about the contract extension. Because there's a good possibility that, they try this thing for 1 year. They may sign Wall in the offseason for 1 year. Tell Bradley Beal opt in, right? If he doesn't demand a trade, he could just play his contract out and become an unrestricted free agent next offseason. You got KP, who's technically on a 1 year deal. You got KCP, who's technically on a 1 year deal. You got Kuz, who's technically on a 1 year after this. So you got all these players on 1 year deals. I would not be surprised if that would be something that's presented to Bradley Beal this off season as well. But if Tommy doesn't offer Bradley Beal all of the money, then that could be the Wizards conceding that they're not willing to compete in the Bradley Beal sweepstakes. And here, this is my thing, that would be the first time that the Wizards have, admitted to something like that or conceded to something like that, because they didn't do it with Gilbert and they didn't do it with John Wall. Bradley Beal would be the first in my lifetime where the Wizards said, we just cannot afford to pay you that amount of money. That would be a first. But I never got the sense that Tommy wouldn't be willing to pay Bill, the full supermax. I got the impression that the Wizards are all in on paying Bill all the money that he wants. It's just whether or not, because Tommy wants to do one thing, but here's the guy that makes all the decisions at the top. He's the guy that writes the checks, cuts the checks for Bradley Beal. He's the one who ultimately makes the decision at the end of the day. So even though Tommy's saying one thing, that doesn't mean that Ted is all on board with what Tommy wants to do.
I agree. And I think what people are not factoring in when you brought that part up about Ted, and I remember I said this in an episode of State of the Wizards, Ted has put he pretty much has put his name in the hat to purchase the Nationals. Okay. We know Nationals is going to cost billions of dollars to purchase them. We already know he has a partner to try to purchase them. We're talking about paying a guy $250 million. Ted, that's just not going to fit into his budget where you can give that kind of money to one guy and you're trying to purchase another franchise. He has to be able to show that he can fork out that kind of money to buy that team. So a part of me doesn't feel that Ted's going to be all in on paying Bill, which leads me to another point. Whereas, and I'm going to play devil's advocate. So let's say that Tommy Shepard isn't going to give Bradley Beal the full super duper max. He's going to tell him, we're going to pay you this amount of money and we're going to make sure it'll be a 5-year deal. So that's him opting out of his contract. But that 5th year will be a team option and not a player's option. So that will be taking the leverage away from Bradley Beal. He decides to put language in Bradley Beal's contract like he did with Spencer Dinwiddie. I could see Bradley Beal saying, no, I'm not signing it. And then it's a possibility that he could walk away with the Wizards getting nothing in return, which would look bad on the organization because they relinquished leverage to him in the first place.
Right.
But I think if Tommy decides to finally make a business decision and do what's best for the franchise, it could still blow up in his face if that player walks away and you don't get anything in return. Can you imagine if that happened? What the conversation would be like on Twitter?
No, I mean, you got some people out there that thinks it's okay if he walks. That's the funny thing. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand the logic behind some of this stuff. I really don't. Like, the Wizards lost all the leverage here. If Bill walks for nothing, that is a catastrophe. You're talking about a guy of his value, of his caliber. Again, you're talking to one of the two biggest critics, Bill critics, probably the world has ever seen. And yet we're over here telling you that you utilize that man's value because he has value. It's not like we're saying he's not valuable. We're telling you he's valuable. We're telling you, this man actually is worth something. As much as we criticize, his game and his leadership or what may have you, he holds value, man. You have to take advantage of that. But, we're talking about the Wizards here as well. You know what I mean? And so I just don't think that the Wizards really know what they want to do with Bradley Beal. That's just my opinion. I don't think they truly know what they want to do. You there?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I definitely don't think that they know what they want to do. Well, they do know what they want to do. They just don't know how the way he's going to react. That's what I think it is. They're not too sure what he wants to do. So that's why it was my mind when people say, "Oh, Bradley Beal doesn't want to go to this team. He doesn't want a team." The teams that's being thrown out there, like Portland, Sacramento, these teams actually have pieces that give us in return. You're talking about him going to a contending team. You're getting late first-round draft picks, and you're getting players that you guys don't really want Tyler Hero. Because we know we have seen people say they don't want him. Why would you be opposed to what Portland would offer us or what Sacramento will offer us, which they'll be able to offer you a little bit something better? You can't have it both ways. You either take what the contender team gives you or you take what the lottery team gives you.
Exactly. And so before we wrap this up, because we got about 5 minutes left, you know, this kind of goes into my last portion. Who should the Wizards package Bill for? If
You know
Bill,
where I
if
stand there,
Bill,
man.
if
I'm not.
Bill, if Bill demands that trade, who should we send them?
Mhm.
Where should we send them, man?
Where should we send them? I want to send them to Sacramento. I want that number 4 pick. I will be okay with Harrison Barnes' contract, Rushawn Holmes, and maybe a future first. I'll be okay with that. I know most people sit there and say no, but I would want what Sacramento is giving us. The only way I would take Portland is if we're going to draft Benedict Mathurin or we're going to draft Habaji. But if Sacramento calls us, we should be advertising Bradley Beal. That's who we should be putting in the package. We shouldn't be talking Kyle Kuzma because I think the conversation will come to a complete halt the moment we bring up Kyle Kuzma's name. If Bradley Beal has value, we need to treat him as such. We need to be offering him. Some people, kind of send mixed messages. Oh, well, you guys act like Bradley Beal is not this great and this, that. We do value him. That's the reason why we said we should trade him to get pieces. But you guys will prefer to throw in Kyle Kuzma and Rui Hachimura and all that, and they get mad when you don't really get what you want. Bradley Beal has the highest value on this team. Use him. So I would say if Sacramento is willing to offer that 4th pick, which we know that they got it out there, they want a win now player. We got the win now player for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, man. I like Sacramento as well, and I like Portland. Those are the 2 destinations, obviously, that I wouldn't mind having. I don't mind Miami. Why not? I mean, you're taking on low-end contracts, easier contracts to flip in the future. What? So what? We're talking about Duncan Robinson's contract. So what? You know what we're really talking about here? We're talking about, Tommy Shepard, putting himself back into a situation that, Wizards fans hollered and screamed about, when they wanted Bertans to sign that contract extension, when they wanted Dinwiddie to sign here. That's the thing that they don't want to see. They don't want to look at that in the mirror again, because they were the ones that was, advocating for it, and then they saw that they saw that it was a mistake. So they was like, oh, no, we don't want to go back that route. But you guys advocated for that. That's your real reason why you don't want Duncan Robinson. But let's call it what it is. Duncan Robinson is not Davis Bertans by any stretch of the imagination. My thing is, at least he's a 3-point shooting. He's actually a sniper. He's actually somebody that can get hot, throughout the season, right? So what was this team sorely lacking last season? 3-point shooting. Okay, you get that in Tyler Hero as well. All right, so let's just say if these guys don't get it done in a year or two, guess what you can do? You can flip those contracts. Those guys are easier to get rid of on that amount of money. Than say Bradley Beal, who's stuck in that $48 million, $49 million a year for 5 years. What suitor you gonna find, who's willing to take on that type of contract? And if Bradley Beal has that lingering wrist injury, you think teams are going to be willing to take that on with an aging Bradley Beal and $49 million? Come on, man. Tyler Hero's young. Duncan Robinson's young. Who else was in that? Gabe, the point guard, right?
Vincent.
Yeah, Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin. So you got these young players, all right, that they're either going to be something or they're not. You're not saying that these guys are going to be, immediate all-stars. You're saying that these guys are going to be either game changers or they're not. Here's why I believe that's one of our best deals, because that team beat us this season. You're talking about a bunch of players who contributed to a a long regular season in a 53. What did they win? 53 wins. They had 53 wins. They contributed to a 50-win season. Okay, so who are we to say that these guys are anything when we didn't have the same contributions on this team for a 50-win season?
No.
So I just look at that as just anyway. Closing arguments. We got to wrap this up.
Yeah. So closing arguments for me is the draft is coming up. Wizards fans, be expecting a WTF draft pick. Wizards they are going to draft somebody that you're not talking about. They're not working out whoever it is. Tommy, if he said he's 15 guys on this draft board, I guarantee you most of those guys have not been worked out yet, and they probably won't be. Expect a WTF pick.
All right. So that'll wrap up this episode of State of the Wizards. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Catch you guys on episode 24. Peace.